Hello, we have been discussing about the paper Introduction to Philosophy, which has been introduced to the NEP, the UGCF syllabus for the Department of Philosophy first semester, and we had picked up on the theme of ethics and aesthetics. We will be discussing about ethics at length today. This is Dr. Ananya Barua, Associate Professor in the Department of Philosophy, Hindu College, University of Delhi. Now, one of the central concerns of ethics is to determine what makes actions right or wrong. Philosophers have proposed different foundations for moral judgments. Consequentialism, for example, states that morality of an action is dependent on its results of consequences. We also have a very popular view where morality is dependent on rules or duties. For example, certain actions are right because they follow moral laws, while others are wrong because they violate them. For example, lying will be considered wrong because it violates moral duty. Further, some philosophers believe morality is based on the character of the person performing the action. A morally good person acts with virtues such as honesty, courage, compassion. Ethics thus is popularly, it's derived from the Greek word ethos, as we understand by now, which means character or custom, and it is the philosophical study of moral principles that determines right and wrong actions. By examining the foundations of moral judgment such as consequences, duties and virtue ethics, it helps find individuals and societies to develop rational standards for ethical behavior. The ethical unethical debate in philosophy concerns the fundamental question of what makes an action morally right ethical or morally wrong unethical. Philosophers have long debated the criteria, the principles and reasoning that determine moral judgments. Now, how do we know what is ethical? In simple terms, an action is considered ethical if it conforms to accepted moral principles, duties or virtues and promotes the well-being of individuals and societies, for example, telling the truth, helping others, acting with fairness and justice. Similarly, unethical would be an action which violates moral principles or causes harm to others. For example, lying or deception, exploitation, injustice or discrimination. However, philosophy recognizes that determining ethical and unethical actions is not always simple, and different moral theories offer different interpretations. Firstly, when we talk about consequentialism, we must understand that for it is one of the approaches to the ethical unethical debate, where consequentialism states that the ethical value of an action depends on its consequences. It is as simple as this. An action will be ethical if it produces good outcomes such as happiness or welfare. A well-known version of utilitarianism associated is with Jeremy Bentham and G.S. Mill. For example, if I am telling a lie and that saves someone's life, consequentialism will consider it as ethically justified. We also have the deontological ethics that argues that morality is based on duties and moral rules, not consequences. According to this view, certain actions are inherently right or wrong. Moral rules must be followed regardless of consequences. So for them, lying will be unethical. Now, virtue ethics focuses on the character of the moral agent rather than rules or consequences. This tradition is strongly associated with Aristotle. According to virtue ethics, ethical actions arise from virtuous characteristics like, honesty, courage, compassion, justice, fairness, and so on and so forth. An action thus would be ethical if it reflects good character. Now, another philosophical debate that concerns whether moral values are universal or culturally dependent is the debate between ethical relativism versus moral objectivism. Now, moral objectivism states that ethical principles are universal and applies to all people. Murder or injustice is wrong regardless of cultural context. Ethical relativism, on the other hand, would argue that moral values depend on culture, tradition, or individual beliefs. For example, different societies may have different moral norms. So sometimes we see people face ethical dilemmas where they face certain situations where moral principles conflict, and these are known as typically ethical dilemmas. For example, telling the truth versus protecting someone's life, individual freedom versus social security. Philosophers analyze such dilemmas to better understand how moral reasoning works. Now, modern discussions of ethics involve issues such as AI and technology, environmental responsibility, medical ethics, social justice, and human rights. These debates show that ethical reasoning is constantly evolving in response to new challenges. The ethical-unethical debate is central to moral philosophy. Different philosophical traditions such as consequentialism, deontology, and virtue ethics offer different ways of determining moral rightness and wrongness. Through rational discussion and critical reflection, philosophy seeks to develop ethical principles that guide responsible human conduct. Now, at this juncture, we will be discussing about the classic ethical example case, the trolley problem. The trolley problem is a moral thought experiment first discussed by the philosopher Philippa Foot and later developed by Judith Jervis Thomson. Now, the scenario is, imagine a runway trolley moving down a track towards 5 people who are tied to the track and cannot escape. And you are standing near a lever that can divert the trolley onto another track. However, on that second track, one person is tied down. You must decide. You do nothing, the trolley kills 5 people, or you pull the lever and the trolley is diverted and kills one person instead. So the ethical question is it morally right to actively cause the death of one person in order to save 5 others? This dilemma forces us to examine the basis of right and wrong, how different ethical theories would respond in such situations. Consequentialism would say that morality or morally correct action is the one that produces the best outcome. So saving 5 people instead of 1 produces less harm. Therefore, consequentialists would argue that pulling the lever is ethically sound. The deontologists would emphasize that on moral duties and rules. A philosopher like Immanuel Kant might argue that intentionally causing harm to a person is morally wrong, even if it produces better consequences. Thus, some deontologists argue that pulling the lever is unethical because it intentionally causes harm. Now, virtue ethics, following the tradition of Aristotle, virtue ethics, it focuses on what a morally virtuous person would do. The emphasis is not only on the outcome but on the character and moral judgment of the decision maker. The trolley problem is widely used because it clearly shows, number 1, the conflict between consequences and moral duties, how ethical theories lead to different moral conclusions, the complexity of moral decision making. It is also used today in discussions about AI, ethics, and autonomous vehicles, where machines might face similar decision-making scenarios. The trolley problem demonstrates how ethical reasoning often involves difficult choices where moral principles such as duty, consequences, and virtue may conflict. So, if we are to check the background of ethics, the Western and Indian traditions, we see that ethics as a branch of philosophy has developed through long intellectual traditions in both Western and Indian philosophical thought. While both traditions are concerned with questions of right and wrong, moral conduct, and the good life, they approach these questions in different ways based on their cultural and philosophical foundations. Now, Western ethics, as we understand by now, had originated in ancient Greek philosophy, where philosophers began to systematically examine moral values and human conduct. The earliest systematic discussions of ethics are found in the works of Greek philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates believed that knowledge leads to virtue. According to him, people do wrong because they are ignorant of what is truly good. Therefore, ethical life requires self-examination and rational inquiry. Plato connected ethics with the concept of justice and harmony in the soul. He believed that the good life involves the proper balance of reason, spirit, and desire. Aristotle developed virtue ethics, which focuses on cultivating moral virtues such as courage, temperance, and justice. According to Aristotle, the goal of human life is eudaimonia, which is flourishing or happiness achieved through virtuous living. Now, during the medieval ethics or during the medieval time, Western ethics was influenced by Christian theology. Moral values were understood in relation to divine commandments and religious teachings. Some of the important thinkers include Augustine of Hippo, Thomas Aquinas, and they attempted to reconcile Greek philosophy with Christian doctrine. In the modern ethical theory in modern period, philosophers developed systematic theories explaining the basis of morality. Two important approaches emerged: duty-based ethics, which was developed by Immanuel Kant, who argued that morality is based on rational duty and universal moral laws. There was consequentialism or utilitarianism associated with thinkers such as Bentham and Mill. According to this view, an action is right if it produces the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Thus, Western ethics evolved from virtue ethics to duty ethics and consequence-based ethics. If we look at the background of ethics in Indian philosophy, we see that the Indian ethical thought is deeply connected with spiritual, religious, and metaphysical ideas. Unlike Western ethics, which often focuses on logical analysis, Indian ethics emphasizes moral discipline and the ultimate goal of liberation, moksha. In the Vedic and the Upanishadic ethics, every Indian ethical ideas appear in the Vedas and the Upanishads. For example, there has been certain concepts like dharma, meaning duty, righteousness, and moral order. It refers to the moral laws that govern both individual conduct and the universe. Karma refers to the law of moral causation, according to which every action produces consequences that influences future experiences. These ideas establish a moral framework where ethical behavior is linked with cosmic justice and spiritual practice. Now, the Bhagavad Gita presents an influential ethical philosophy based on duty and selfless action. Some of the key principles of ethical thoughts in the Bhagavad Gita is Nishkama Karma, which is selfless action, action without attachment to results. Performing one's dharma or duty faithfully, acting with detachment and devotion. Now, Bhagavad Gita, the text, emphasizes that moral action should be performed without selfish desire. We also have the Buddhist ethics, Buddhist ethics focuses on eliminating suffering or dukkha through moral discipline. The founder of Buddhism, Gautama Buddha, taught that ethical living is necessary for spiritual liberation. The main ethical principles for them include the 5 precepts, which is non-violence, the truthfulness, and so on and so forth. They also have the 8-fold path theory, which includes the right action, right speech, right livelihood, and more. In the same terrain, we have the Jain ethics. Jain philosophy emphasizes extreme moral discipline and non-violence. The central ethical principle is ahimsa, absolute non-violence towards all living beings. Other principles include truthfulness, non-stealing, non-attachment, and these teachings are associated with Lord Mahavira. So, if we are to compare in the PPT as being displayed here between Western ethics and Indian ethics, we see that the Western ethics emphasizes on rational analysis, Indian ethics emphasizes on spiritual discipline. Western ethics focuses on moral theories, Indian ethics focuses on moral practice. Western ethics is concerned with justice and happiness. Indian ethics is concerned with liberation, which is moksha. Western ethics, on the other one hand, has been developed through philosophical debates. Indian ethics is closely linked with religion and spirituality. So, both Western and Indian traditions have contributed significantly to the development of ethical philosophy. Western ethics emphasizes logical analysis and systematic moral theories, while Indian ethics integrates moral conduct with spiritual development and cosmic order. Together, these traditions provide a comprehensive understanding of human morality and the pursuit of a good life. Now, in contemporary society, ethics continues to play a crucial role in guiding human behavior and addressing complex moral problems arising from modern social, scientific, and technological developments. Contemporary ethics expands beyond traditional moral philosophy to deal with practical issues affecting individuals, societies, and the global community. Now, one of the most important developments in contemporary ethics is the rise of applied ethics, which involves applying moral principles to real life situations. Some of the major areas of applied ethics include bioethics. Bioethics deals with moral issues related to medicine and life sciences. It examines ethical questions about medical treatment, euthanasia, abortion, organ transplantation, genetic engineering. These issues require careful ethical analysis because they affect human life and dignity. In the same format, we have environmental ethics. Environmental ethics addresses the moral relationship between humans and nature. It emphasizes responsibility towards protection of ecosystem, conservation of natural resources, climate change, animal welfare. This branch argues that nature and living beings possesses intrinsic value and should not be exploited irresponsibly. Now, in business or professional ethics in modern economic systems, ethical principles are essential for responsible business practices. Business ethics focuses on honesty in trade, fair labor practices, corporate social responsibility or CSR, transparency and accountability. Professional ethics also guide the conduct of doctors, lawyers, teachers, journalists, and scientists. Ethics and technology. Rapid technological development has created new ethical challenges. For example, AI and automation, data privacy and surveillance, cyber crime, misuse of digital information. Philosophers and policymakers must evaluate how technological innovations affect human rights, autonomy, and social justice. In contemporary times, ethics increasingly addresses global issues affecting humanity as a whole. Important concerns include human rights, social justice, poverty and inequality, gender equality, international peace, international organizations and governments that rely on ethical principles for promoting justice, dignity, equality across cultures and nations. Now, under ethics and cultural diversity, we see that modern societies are increasingly multicultural. Contemporary ethics therefore engages with questions such as, are moral values universal or culturally relative? How can different moral traditions coexist peacefully? Philosophers attempt to balance respect for cultural diversity with universal moral standards such as human rights. In the modern world, ethical reflection is essential because social and technological changes create new moral dilemmas. Global interdependence requires shared ethical standards. Individuals and institutions must act responsibly for the common good. Ethics help societies develop moral guidelines for addressing complex problems and promoting human welfare. Ethics in contemporary times extends beyond theoretical classrooms or discussions to address real-world moral challenges. Through fields such as bioethics, environmental ethics, and business ethics or professional ethics, contemporary moral philosophy seeks to guide responsible action in an increasingly complex and interconnected world. Now, the very hot topic in today's time is, why should ethics engage with artificial intelligence or AI? Artificial intelligence systems are now used in healthcare diagnostics, finance and banking, policing and surveillance, hiring decisions, education and automated learning, autonomous vehicles, and so on and so forth. Major AI systems are developed by companies such as OpenAI, Google, and Microsoft. Because these technologies can shape human lives, opportunities, and rights, ethical reflection is necessary to ensure they are fair, safe, and beneficial. Now, ethics in AI would examine how AI systems should be designed, what values should guide them, how responsibilities should be assigned when harm occurs. Some of the core ethical concerns in AI is about responsibility and accountability. One major issue is determining who is responsible when AI systems cause harm. For example, if a self-driving car causes an accident, who is responsible? The programmer, the company, or the user? Ethics must clarify moral and legal accountability. Number 2, biasness and fairness. AI systems learn from large data sets. If the data contains social biases, the AI may reproduce them. Examples include racial biasness in facial recognition, gender biasness in hiring algorithms. Ethical analysis asks how to ensure fair and unbiased decision making. Privacy and surveillance. AI technologies can collect and analyze enormous amounts of personal data. Ethical concerns include invasion of privacy, mass surveillance, misuse of personal information. Ethicists must consider how to protect individual autonomy and dignity. Transparency and explainability. Many AI systems operate as black boxes, meaning their decisions are difficult to understand. Ethical questions arise. Should AI decisions always be explainable? Do individuals have a right to know why an algorithm made a decision about them? Transparency is crucial for trust and accountability. Human autonomy and control. Ethicists worry about whether humans might lose control over critical decisions. Examples include autonomous weapons, automated financial trading, algorithmic governance. Ethical frameworks must ensure humans remain in meaningful control of AI systems. So, some of the possible questions an ethicist must engage with vis-a-vis AI or artificial intelligence are moral responsibility. Questions such as who should be morally responsible for the actions of AI systems? Can machines be considered moral agents? On fairness and justice, an ethicist must engage on questions like how can algorithmic biasness be prevented? How can AI decisions be made fair for all social groups? From the domain of human rights, does AI threaten fundamental rights such as privacy and freedom? How should data be ethically collected and used? Should AI systems always provide explanations for their decisions? What level of transparency is necessary for ethical accountability? How can humans ensure control over autonomous technologies? Should certain AI applications be restricted or banned? Will AI increase economic inequality? How should societies manage job displacement caused by AI? So we see that several ethical principles are commonly proposed to guide AI development, like beneficence, where AI should benefit humanity; non-maleficence, where AI should not cause harm; justice, where AI systems should be fair and unbiased; autonomy, human freedom and decision making must be respected; accountability, responsibility for AI decisions must be clearly defined, and these principles would help ensure that technological progress remains aligned with human values. With this, we come to a closure of our engagement of ethics with AI, hoping that the AI systems would increasingly influence positively the human lives, and the ethical oversight would prevent misuse and harmful consequences. Thank you so much.